Everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy. What's up?
Not much, dude. We are so close to the season, man. I'm getting amped, like for real. I'm getting jacked up. We're like NFL roster cut down, Dynasty roster cut down. My phone will not stop buzzing. So it's we're getting active, man. We're getting active.
I know I'm trying to figure out how to turn off notifications about who people just dropping people. Like do I need to know every single one? But
Yes.
it is helpful because every
Yeah.
once in a while someone will get dropped that you're like, oh, I can find room for him on my team. Other than that,
Absolutely.
it is
Yeah.
quite annoying.
Yeah, no, it is, but it's also a sign of like things are, we're getting ready to roll. Like point scoring season's about to be here. We got to get our rosters in shape. We got to set those lineups. You're going to start seeing the MFL emails coming through. Your opponents are setting their lineups, that whole thing. So yeah, man, I'm excited about that. But before we get going, I do want to mention that in a couple weeks here, we're going to have Leo P, OG, football guys, writer, and I know he's doing a lot of podcasting right now and all that good stuff. I think we do a lot of similar thinking in terms of like outside the box and playing the opponents and stuff. So we're going to have him on, talk to him. And we're also going to have John Bosch on, or at least I'm probably going to do something on the side with John Bosch because of our scheduling, but we're going to do uh, an auction strategy episode. It's going to be in season, but I don't really care.
Oh, yeah.
We do strategy around here, so it'll be evergreen, and I think it'll be interesting nonetheless. So just give a look out for that. There's also a couple more guests that I'm planning to have on, like Paul Patterson, friend of the show, return guest. So he'll be on at some point, but a couple others that I'm trying to plan out. So keep an eye out for those. But other than that, yeah, man, we can keep it rolling.
All right. News and nonsense. So it's not mentioned here, but CD Lamb did in fact get paid.
Oh
So
yes, good.
he's back with the team today. First practice, no 7-on-7s, but signed the contract and he's ready to go. So no fear there. Draft and trade accordingly. But we do have some roster cuts.
Yeah.
I never thought in a million years I'd actually care about roster cuts. But I do. It's like a back when I was playing like just like redraft or just being a fan of NFL teams and the NFL draft, which got me into Dynasty. Like this day didn't really matter to me all that much. Like now it's like, okay, I'm like just refreshing Twitter like over and over and over to figure out like, who's still around. So, but some big names, big-ish names. So we have Evan Hull.
For us.
I mean, it's a guy that, not only us was kind of hoping would carve out some sort of role there in Indianapolis, but he is cut. I have no idea who's even behind Jonathan Taylor at this point.
It's Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson, who I snagged up in a couple spots just because you want to have the handcuff there, and I don't believe in Trey Sermon enough to not roster Tyler Goodson when he's out there, and Evan Hull is no longer on the roster. I really think Evan Hull is a pretty talented player. I'm surprised that he got cut, but I would expect him to end up on another roster. So I'm going to kind of hold out before I drop him. I mean, that's one of the things I think you can get like overzealous and like, oh, it's roster cuts and this guy's no longer on a roster. But a lot of these guys end up on rosters and can be used. Like if Evan Hull ended up on Dallas, you know what I mean? We'd be a little interested, I feel like, in Evan Hull, whether he got cut or not from Indy. So I'm going to hold on to him a little longer and see where he ends up, landing. But yeah, disappointing for that one, at least for me. I thought he was a good player.
Desmond Ritter. No, that's Arizona, right?
Who cares? Like,
Okay, yeah. Well, I think what was crazy is that I think it's Arizona, and they had it as Kyler Murray,
yeah,
Ritter, and then Tune, and so they kept Clayton Tune. So a guy that like I had heard on for last year. So
yeah,
not that big a deal, but that whole quarterback class sucks. It's terrible. Malik Willis gets traded. Yeah.
No, it
yeah.
is a brutal class. I just want to say on that, like I think people would have fought us over saying Desmond Ritter was bad last prospect profiling season.
Oh, I know.
And it's just hilarious where we're at now that he's like cut, like he's not even on our roster anymore, and that just shows you how desperate Atlanta was for like anything at the time. So, yeah, it's just an interesting one to see him get cut because I do feel like he's probably like one of the more high-profile dynasty players that got cut. of all of these, especially since we play Superflex. So yeah, it's just an interesting one to me.
Deontay Foreman. This is kind of surprising just because we all know what happened with him with the Achilles and all that, and he was able to come back. And he's been on a couple different teams, and he's been decent producing. He's been decent. So that one's a little shocking to me. Hopefully that team plans on bringing him back to the practice squad for now in this little, interim place. But, I mean, he's a solid RB2 on most teams. I'm kind of shocked that he got waived.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's kind of wheels up on Jerome Ford. They obviously are comfortable with Nick Chubb. I guess there's not really much else to get excited about in that backfield. So yeah, they believe in those two. But I think maybe we're undervaluing Jerome Ford just a little bit. I'm not fully convinced that Nick Chubb's going to come back healthy. I mean, he's obviously starting the season on PUP, so we're going to get a pretty healthy dose of Jerome Ford. And he's been okay whenever he's gotten touches. I know that Foreman had outplayed him at times when he was there, but he's no longer there. So
yeah,
I kind of like Ford this season, and I think that he's going under the radar. Might be a guy that you can go after as a contender. Not somebody I want long term. Like I just he's not really that kind of profile or prospect that you want to hold on to long term. But I kind of like what I see for this year or short term.
All right, last one, which is kind of we talked about him last week. Tim Patrick, the guy goes out there, blows his ACL 2 years later, or Achilles. But he come back and it seemed like like during the preseason, people are tracking such and such player played with the ones or he played with the twos, and it was okay, well it's game 3 and he was still in there for the final game of the twos, and a lot of that didn't seem to really matter all that much. But Tim Patrick had a shit ton of play during the preseason.
Yeah, well. Guys that you're going to cut get a lot of play sometimes in the preseason as you're trying out other players.
But they have the rookie Troy Franklin who had 1 catch all preseason.
Yeah,
is that right?
I
think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who it was that I was listening to talk about some team, and how the preseason touches were, and I'm like, we're really overstating how much these preseason touches matter. Oh, it was Pat Freiermuth, and I'm like. Yeah. We're like, oh, his number of plays with the ones was really low. I'm like, dude, it's preseason. I'm not really concerned that they're trying Darnell Washington out in preseason more than they're running Pat Freiermuth. I'm pretty sure he's going to see the most targets on the team, and he'll be okay. That's just how I feel about that situation. I feel like we, in general, not just that situation, I feel like we overstate what we're seeing in preseason when these teams are likely just trying shit out. So I don't know, but with this, the Tim Patrick thing, what it made me think of was Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin and those guys. Clearly, they like Tim Patrick enough there. Just in general, the team, the players, they like Tim Patrick there. So to get rid of a guy like that, who's probably a decent locker room presence and all that, I feel like they have to be comfortable with what they have. So somebody there might actually do something outside of Cortland Sutton. I'm just not exactly sure who it is.
No idea. Maybe one of the tight ends, but I think Tim Patrick already has a new home. I think he's going to be reportedly landing with the Detroit Lions on their practice squad. So, and there's room for him there.
Yeah. So. No, I mean, I think that he could absolutely do something there. He could push Jameson Williams for targets. So
it's true.
It's true, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, his lack of knees will be a challenge to overcome, but we will see. I do think that it's a place where he could carve out a role of sorts.
All right, some more nonsense. That's a good question. Do mock drafts help? Do mock drafts help?
I mean, we're in the heart of redraft season. You know what I mean? There's I feel like people are mock drafting all over the place, and even for Dynasty, people love to mock draft. But I wonder how helpful it actually is, because it's never what you actually see in your draft, and the settings are rarely ever the same when you're doing mock drafts. So I just wonder if they're worth our time. You may be honestly better spent jumping in a best ball draft, which. Just because there's potential profitability in it, not that it's actually going to help you as much, because best ball isn't the same as when you get into, one of your home redraft leagues or even your Dynasty league drafts. So, I think when I was thinking about this, I do think that it goes back to kind of, we talked a lot early this offseason, Jake and I specifically, but in general, we talked a lot about the importance of like ranking and like how to come up with rankings. And I think that's the better way to approach it, is looking at rankings rather than like mock drafting. You save yourself a lot of time in the end, I feel like. I mean, it might not be as fun, but the rankings in general and like the ADP and kind of looking at that side by side, I think is a lot more helpful than mock drafting. I just think it's kind of a useless exercise that we enjoy more than it's actually doing something like for us. You know what I mean? Like benefiting us and teaching us anything that we can take into our drafts.
I agree. In fact, I saw somebody mention this on Twitter, which is like, I don't mock draft. And me personally, I don't really do it either. I will do it for like rookie drafts, but I won't do it against other people. I'll just do it against ADP with the fantasymockdrafts.com. But that's just because I don't have time to like do it with the real actual humans. But I've never seen anybody say, I did 30 mock drafts and then my real fantasy draft went exactly like I had planned. Like every time it was like, this is so much different than all the mocks I've been in. It's like, well, think about that next year. Like it's a waste of time, but it's fun. It's a way for you to kind of get your juices flowing, right? Get yourself familiar with ADP and all that. But like, I don't think it's actually a beneficial exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good exercise to do one or two on like excuse me, on like any platform you're on, because it is good to like just see where players fall in ADP. I do think that's a good idea. You know what I mean? To like know where the platform's ADP has certain players so you can take advantage of that. Like I do think it's good to hop in and look at those things, but it's not actually going to be beneficial to like go through every pick. But what you did say that did stick with me and I hadn't thought of is like, I do think actually mock drafting for Dynasty rookie drafts is super helpful, because most of the time when we do that, we are doing it with 12 other people. Like I know you're saying you do it with like, like whatever, like a mock draft site or whatever it is. But like, you know how we were doing it and always do it most of the time with like hop in the Discord, get 12 people, get 10 people and do a rookie draft. And like those, first of all, they're 4 rounds. So there's only a limited number of like iterations or like, different picks that can really be made in a reasonable way. So it does help you to kind of get a really good gauge. So I do think it's different when it comes to that. And if you can do a Dynasty mock draft with real people, you might real people that you're going to do a draft with, like that would be helpful. But otherwise, I don't think you're going to be getting as much out of it as just like kind of getting familiar with the platform, having, good rankings and good ADP, like on the side that you trust, and kind of going by that. I think that's the best way to do it. But just one of those things I was thinking about, because I do feel like it's that time of season we're all doing redraft leagues and all that kind of stuff and getting ready for that. So yeah, it's just one thing I was thinking about.
All right, last piece of nonsense here.
Jake coming in real quick. We do miss you, brothers. Splash Bros about to enjoy the shortest episodes of the August. Yeah, when you're not here, it cuts about 30 minutes out just for me talking.
Man, I mean, yeah, that's true. There's so many episodes where we've covered like 15 topics, and because you and I inherently speak kind of fast, and it's like 45 minutes. I'm like, well, I guess we're done. That's good. It's having Jake there really kind of drives a lot of stuff home that like we just kind of blow by. So
it does. Jake just likes to keep thinking, and then we just go down the rabbit hole. And so that does tend to happen. But we do miss Jake, and he'll be back in probably like a couple months or something like that. He's decided to take a long sabbatical and enjoy himself, which I would like to do too. But yeah, we miss you.
All right, last piece of nonsense. So why don't you tell me what you think the difference between Rashid Rice and DJ Moore is?
This is hilarious. I couldn't wait to bring Paul on the show. So I'll definitely discuss this with him. Really good friend of mine. So I don't think I'm like, coming at him sideways here talking about this at all. No. I even commented on the post itself, but he posted on Twitter without using the word suspension. Tell me why Rashid Rice shouldn't be going next to or ahead of DK Metcalf and DJ Moore in drafts. And like, I think like there's kind of a fair point to what he's saying. Like I do understand what he's saying, especially from a fantasy perspective. It makes a lot of sense, but I was kind of like thinking about this more and more and like why there's like a disconnect for me. in my head when thinking about, Rashid Rice versus like a DJ Moore or DK Metcalf. And it's, just, it's kind of because it's tough, even if Rice is a better fantasy asset, film bros, or just like people who generally like think they know football better or whatever, think they know prospecting better, right? They think that they want like a guy like Moore or DK Metcalf to be better than Rice, right? Because they technically are like better players, more physically gifted, like these dominant phenoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want them to produce like that for fantasy too. And I think one of the things, that Paul was highlighting is that Moore was way over expectation last year, right? Like he wasn't expected to score as many fantasy points last year, but isn't that impressive with how bad the QB play was? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Obviously
Moore's
his
done this.
expectation. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, Moore's done this like since day one, since he's been in the league, right? He's been a little like allergic to touchdowns, but just who he is. He's. I get what you're saying, and I'm with you there. He's a better wide receiver, like talent wise. That's why.
Right.
What draws everyone to Rashid is the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And
we're
it's not
there.
like we are getting there, and it's not like the Chiefs' number one wide receiver. Like ever since Tyreek Hill left, like the only real option that you're like super happy to start every single week has been Kelsey. And I know Rice really carved out a hole for himself last year, but I still have this thought of like he's gonna look for Kelsey and then he's gonna throw it to whoever the hell he wants to. Like I don't think that Rashid Rice is like this. Like I don't think he's this true alpha. But I'll let you finish.
No. I mean, it's great points and kind of leading to what I'm thinking and what I'm getting at here, and kind of using that, like, he was playing way above his head last year in terms of expectation. I think that's because the QB play was so bad, but he actually is just damn good, right? And I think we use that against him when Rice likely couldn't have managed that in the same situation, right? And that's the difference between those players, in my opinion. Like you put them in, and obviously it doesn't matter because Rice isn't in that situation. He's in a great situation, right? But Rice now has extra competition, and I'm not sure he has the talent to sustain what he's, was doing last year, even given the situation, even given how beneficial it is being in KC, right? Like having the added depth of Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy, who I think Brown's being completely underrated in terms of just what he'll be able to do when he's on the field there. Like everybody's just like, well, it's almost as like he's not going to be a factor. And I think that it's going to be like, you're going to see these three guys have around like 70 targets each. Like they're going to be pretty evenly split, I imagine. You know what I mean? Like give or take. Like I'm sure one or the other is going to have, maybe Rice will lead that group with 80 and the other one will have, 60 and set. Like it'll be pretty close though, I think. And I'm just thinking about, even this year with DJ Moore having the added competition where he's at, it just strikes me that we're thinking about those situations so differently, but the talent of the players is also so drastically different, and the fantasy points scored kind of don't match up with what is actually happening, I feel like, or what is the actual reality on the field. But that's not necessarily how fantasy always works. But that said, I do think that when we're like logically working through these situations, we're kind of giving Rice more of a pass than we should be. Just because he plays for Kansas City, and we're not really considering the talent level or everything that was added there. And this just the thought exercise led me to that conclusion. Again, I think I already was there, but it was just kind of like almost like evidence backing it in some way to me. So I just wanted to kind of bring that thought process to the listeners. And so we can move on. And I appreciate you for indulging my nonsense.
That's what we do here. And we'll talk about
indulge Billy's nonsense. That's what we do here.
What else are we gonna do, huh? All right, so I like this topic. You have it framed as fantasy phantoms, and who has gone ghost this offseason and preseason. And I looked at your list, and I was like, this is a good one. This is a good one. Got me thinking about some stuff. So let's just hit on the first one. This is good. Brock Bowers. Have you heard a ton about Brock Bowers this preseason?
Where the fuck is this guy? No, honestly, the last thing I
No.
actually did hear about him was that he was on blocking duty, that he was handling a ton of blocking duty during the preseason. And maybe they're just trying to get him acclimated. Like, I'm not worried about that personally at all or anything. But yeah, I mean, I've also just been wondering to myself, like, what to do with Michael Mayer. Because I do think that he's a damn good player. Like, just because
I
they
know.
added Brock Bowers doesn't lessen like who Michael Mayer is himself and the longevity of tight ends in this league and his ability to kind of develop in this situation may be really beneficial for him long term. And I wonder if he's a guy who we could target, just kind of ancillary conversation, who we could target for super cheap in season, like potentially like 4th-round pick kind of stuff, like multiple 4th-round picks, or some backup running back that somebody needs and you're rebuilding, those kind of things. But anyway, with Brock Bowers, just it was kind of interesting to me that we didn't really hear anything from him in terms of like the passing game, in the preseason, given we did see some of the starters and we saw, the QB battle with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. So I thought we might see more of him, but yeah, just one of those guys who I felt like has gone ghost. And I'm not sure if he's someone that we can really target because of that. But yeah, what do you think about him?
Nothing. It doesn't make me worried about him.
Nothing.
Yeah, doesn't make me worried about Brock Bowers. I think he's going to be just fine.
Mhm.
But it is interesting that, like, again, when I looked at the list, I'm like, it's crazy. Like, these are just names that, like, I'm pretty keyed in for the most part, and just really not a peep about. Not like a sweet ass like one-handed grab in the end zone or anything crazy like that, or he broke one off for 60 yards, or there just hasn't been anything there. But I'm not worried about it. Next one, Pat Fryermuth.
We just mentioned him kind of leading into this because I thought of something about him, but Patty F, man, like even with the preseason stuff, he hasn't really, been getting targeted in there. And again, I'm not worried about that at all, but just more kind of, evidence that he's kind of been a ghost this preseason and really for the whole offseason, I feel like. But he's a guy who I can't get out of my head that he's going to be pretty solid this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like what I saw from Russell Wilson in that final preseason game, it was very, one drive, touchdown drive, very short, but he looked pretty solid, man. Like he looked fine. And I think that, we're looking at a team here that is literally right now just George Pickens. Like these other guys, I have no interest in even seeing them on the field in terms of Calvin Austin and who's the other guy that's
Van Jefferson.
there, Van Jefferson. Like, please stop with Van Jefferson. Are you kidding me? So I'm pretty interested in Muth, and I've been kind of trying to buy him here and there. I think people know that he's kind of on the downswing. Some might just hold on to him, but yeah, he's a guy who I'm kind of interested in. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe as to what you were saying earlier about like maybe trying to keep these starters from seeing a lot of snaps in preseason, maybe they're trying to keep them healthy. Like I honestly believe at the end of the season, Pat Fryermuth is going to finish second on that team in targets.
Right. That's
right?
what I was getting at. Arthur.
And the targets should be okay. I mean, Russell Wilson is Super Bowl winning quarterback, one of the best head coaches in the league. I'm not worried about it. If his lack of playing time in the preseason, or at least lack of hype in the preseason, doesn't bother me whatsoever.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think I'm super concerned about like who the quarterback would be, because I think he would be second on the team in targets, and he would kind of be at that safety blanket no matter who's in there really. So yeah, I like his role there, and I think he's going undervalued, especially right now, especially this season. So definitely could take advantage of that. What do we got next?
Zach Charbonnet. So this one actually kind of, affects my self-esteem a little bit more than anything else. Like,
wow,
well, whatever.
Taking this one to heart.
Kind of a little bit. Honestly, I mean, I said last year, I'll say it again. Like, I honestly thought that Zach Charbonnet was going to pull away with that job. I still, to this day, think that all around.
Kenny McIntosh season.
And Kenny McIntosh has done pretty well, too. I think Zach Charbonnet is a better running back with Walker. But to the local beat writers and stuff like that go to the practices every day, they're saying, Kenneth Walker is just like yoked up, ready to go. It's a new regime there. So maybe they're more comfortable with just like, hey, we're going to go with Kenneth Walker, bell cow, and then Zach Charbonnet, an actual, like, not 1A or 1B, but actually just the B to the A, right? So I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned there that Zach Charbonnet isn't going to get the run that I thought he was going to get. So out of the first 3 that we talked about, this one actually is a little bit concerning to me.
Yeah. Joe, they're there. You're right. It's going to be okay. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube. Get in here in the comments. We love that shit. Yeah. No, I mean, this one's so interesting because I really like this offense. I'm very interested in getting in on this offense, and Charbonnet feels like a pretty cheap way to get into it. And he has that contingent upside of if Ken Walker got injured, like he's definitely going to, the lead guy in that role. So, I mean, there'll be some Kenny McIntosh sprinkled in to Jake's point for sure. But I think that he's a really talented player, and the injuries have kind of piled up. And I think that's the reason why we've forgotten about him. I mean, he's been injured this preseason, so that's why he hasn't really played much. But I think that as much as I've heard the drumbeat on Ken Walker, and I actually think Ken Walker, we're doing this thing with Charbonnet where it's like we're trying to diminish Ken Walker's like talent and potential fantasy upside production success or whatever to prop up Charbonnet. I just think they're both good. And I think that you want pieces of this offense and pieces of that backfield. So I'm interested in Charbonnet, and I'll be interested until he proves on the field that we shouldn't be. And to this point, like that hasn't happened. He's actually been as efficient, if not more efficient in most ways than Ken Walker. I don't need to break down every bit of this. We've done this actually before, but it's all kind of all over the stat sheet. He kind of lines up right next to Walker. So I'm not really concerned about Charbonnet on the field as much as everybody's super excited for Walker. Maybe a little too excited right now.
Okay. Next one, Marquise Brown. So again, going back to the Rashee Rice thing, Marquise Brown, he got tackled and hurt his shoulder, right? So he's going to be out for probably the first 4 weeks or so of the season. Going to be out for a little bit at least. I think when he comes back, like I could see Rashee Rice having, number 1 or 2 on targets, but for the first few weeks. But I honestly think that Marquise Brown coming back is going to be a big problem for Rashee Rice. People are forgetting about Marquise Brown because we haven't seen him. He's going to be hurt. I mean, he might not even be on like your active bench or roster right now. You might have already moved him down to the IR. And so you're not even seeing him on your team. So you're not thinking about him. But outside of Kelsey, he's the second best receiver on that team.
Marquise Brown?
Yeah. Well, we'll see with Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is really good too.
I think I think Rice is a fine player. I think they're probably pretty comparable. I'm just looking like Marquise Brown's 140, wide receiver 51. Like he's a pretty I'm just looking at this offense, and again, it goes back to kind of the conversation I was having about Rashee Rice. I think that those 3 receivers, Worthy, Rice, and Brown, at the end of the year on a per game basis are going to have pretty similar outcomes. And so like I'm trying to find like cheap entry points into like good offenses. And he feels like right now a pretty good way. And like you said, he's like the forgotten on the IR kind of guy or whatever. Like he's kind of, a throw in on trades that I want to add, or even a guy who you can maybe just go after for, those contending type teams. I know it's just a 1-year deal, so you don't want to invest a ton into it. But like I said, like a throw in or something like that, I think it's a good way to get into that team. And I think he's going to have some, like if he's on the field, he's going to have some really, really like good games. And I think, even though they're going to be, it's not going to be super consistent. Like, I think it'll be pretty damn consistent. Like Mahomes is going to find this guy, and all he needs is 2-3 catches a game to actually get you where you need to. Like Marquise Brown, that's what he does. So, I kind of like it. And I think we're just kind of, it's like the redheaded stepchild thing. I don't know why we just hate Marquise Brown out of all this, all the siblings that are the KC wide receivers. Weird. Real quick here, Jake, Noah Fant might be even cheaper entry point into the Seattle Seahawks offense than
It's possible.
Charbonnet, right? And yeah, I think that's a totally great way to get into that offense for really cheap. You have a lot less expectations, obviously, but I do agree that's a very, very cheap entry point.
All right. Roman Wilson, rookie.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. So yeah, just kind of what we were talking about before, like it's a George Pickens show. But Roman Wilson, just one note here, he got injured at the end of July, and he hasn't practiced all of August, which is terrible for rookies. Like that's not how you want to start your rookie career. So I mean, at this point, I'd be total fade on Wilson. Like I don't expect much at all from him the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I feel that, but it kind of goes back to the conversation a little bit of like there's nobody else on that team besides, Pickens and Freiermuth. And once he gets
Somebody's got to catch the ball.
No, it's not even somebody has to catch the ball. What I'm thinking is, say he finally gets on the field week 8 even, right? Like if he's actually talented, like some of us think or even they did, they got him I think they drafted him in the 3rd round. So if he's as talented as Pittsburgh even thinks he is, like he's probably going to carve out some kind of role for himself that is noticeable, right? So he's just a guy who I think, he was going like late 2nd, early 3rd of rookie drafts. You could probably work out a deal to get him a lot cheaper than that, but I understand that he's not super appealing and like even his profile, I guess, not a lot of upside in fantasy, but definitely one of those guys who has just completely disappeared from the fantasy radar, in my opinion, gone completely ghost. So if you are in on him, if you are interested in him, I do think that there's some opportunity to get in on that profile. I haven't really done that at all. I haven't seen any opportunities to do it, or maybe I haven't really made any trades where he's been on a team because I would try to like throw him in. If you're adding like a 4th round pick or something, like Roman Wilson is definitely better than a random 4th round pick next year, I think, to launch onto your roster. So I think some people could view him that way.
All right. Next one, Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson, definitely kind of a darling to a lot of people last year. There with Kyler Murray, you have Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then who else? Haven't heard a lot about Michael Wilson. We've had some pretty hot takes on Greg Dortch. Out of Wilson and Dortch, who are you more excited about?
I mean, does it even matter when Michael Wilson's going 177 and Greg Dortch is going 237? Like, I'm not that interested in Michael Wilson. It's kind of like access to these offenses. And I do think that I would much rather have Greg Dortch at that price, knowing what he's already done there. Like Michael Wilson is still kind of a pipe dream. Like it's just, pretty good talent profile, injured in college, and we're hoping that he pans out. But everything from camp, not even preseason, forget preseason, everything from camp has indicated that Greg Dortch is in the best shape of his life, we could say, but actually he looks really good. And also, is outplaying Wilson from what I can tell, and is probably going to get on the field ahead of him. So I like the idea of Dortch over Wilson. And I do think that Michael Wilson has gone appropriately ghost.
That's probably fine. This one's a little sad. I mean, wasn't huge on this guy too much. I really liked his landing spot, but Malachi Corley up there with Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. But he's another guy that just haven't heard much about Malachi Corley this preseason, or in the offseason. I mean, there's been, honestly, in my head, I could think of one report where I read that, Malachi Corley was doing well. And I think that was 2 months ago. So he literally ghosted us because I haven't heard shit.
I love it. Yeah, I was actually pretty high on Malachi Corley, the talent. I think that he's got a lot to offer. And specifically, I think he can carve out a role on this team. I don't think that who did they add? Oh, my God. Mike Williams is long for the NFL. So, he's not long for a full season most of the time. So I think we could definitely see Malachi Corley just getting the opportunity inherently for that reason. But also I think that he profiles more as the slot guy anyway. And so at the beginning, if Mike Williams is there, he's going to work in the role that he should be in. You know what I mean? So I think we'll probably see some of him. If he's any good, we will see some of him for sure. I don't think that the team he's on, I don't think that the wide receiver group he's in is going to prevent him from getting on the field if he's any good. So I'm still interested in Malachi Corley. I like that he's gone Ghost because I think that there's maybe opportunity to add a high upside piece to your dynasty team. This isn't like Roman Wilson, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like they might be the same height, but they're not. These aren't the same guys at all. Like one is a very, very dynamic player who could offer some really, big play games or, big weeks. So did I just lose Uriah? Are you there?
No, my
okay.
camera.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering. All right. So yeah, I think Malachi Corley is a little bit more interesting than the rest of, or not than the rest of, than some of these other guys, but definitely like a Roman Wilson profile. So yeah, I would be interested in trying to find some ways to get him on the team. Real quick here, Jake, always coming in, deep thinker, going deep with the prospects, deep with the players. Xavier Weaver, man, this guy, like I don't know why we should be interested in him, but he's Arizona wide receiver. I guess he made the team. So I can't hate on that. And if Jake is interested in him, we probably should do a little digging. So I got to dig into him a little bit more for sure. But just, a very deep sleeper there. Exactly. Very deep sleeper there from our boy Jake.
That's what he's good at.
Absolutely.
All right. These next two I added, we don't have to talk a whole lot about him, but T. Higgins, just another guy like, we know who T. Higgins is, which is, I think, is why we shouldn't care about it as much. But like, it's not like T. Higgins has been balling out in preseason, or camp reports like, oh man, T. Higgins having a career year or anything like that. Like he's playing on the tag this year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Jamar Chase is been sitting out, but it's going to be playing this year. But like, he's just one of those guys. Like when we're done here, real quick, I'll have a question at the end, which I think we've asked probably to be like 3 weeks in a row now, but I think it's worth asking. But yeah, Higgins. Do you care at all that we haven't been hearing about him in preseason?
I mean, I feel like the only thing I've been hearing about Higgins for the last year and a half is hate, really. Is just like this guy is injury riddled. He's injury prone, that whole thing until he's not, and he's absolutely balling out. So, we'll see how long the injury prone thing lasts for the community. But yeah, I mean, he has, I guess, kind of gone under the radar, but yeah, I think he's undervalued. I like Higgins a lot. I think he could walk right into a wide receiver one role still next year. So, yeah, this is a good one for sure. This is a good one. More high profile one, definitely a high price one, but he's absolutely going undervalued, I think, this offseason.
And then the final two for me are both the Watsons. You have Deshaun and Christian. Obviously, Deshaun, with the reason why is that he hasn't thrown a ball. We haven't seen him throw a ball live on TV. Like, I mean, either he's completely toast or he has a chance of coming back to being, a top 10 type quarterback. Like, I just don't even know what to do right now. Like, if I have him, like, I don't even know if there's a quarterback willing to tier down to or tier over to that, I just want to try to get off of him at this point. Like, I want to see something. I think even the fans, like the poor Cleveland fans, don't get to see their $200 million man, right? He hasn't thrown a single fucking ball. Kind of makes me nervous. Right now, they're rostering, after Cutdowns, they're rostering 4 quarterbacks. They have DTR, they have Huntley, famous Jameis, who should probably be starting just for funsies, and then they have Deshaun Watson. And if anything, if a team doesn't have the balls or stone enough of commitment to cut down to 3 quarterbacks like most normal teams do, 2 quarterbacks, they're running with 4 right now. Does that make you worried if you were rostering Watson?
I thought DTR got cut. Did he not?
No. He's the only one, according to the reports, he's the only one that's like actually safe. They're thinking they get shot.
Tyler Huntley, Dorian. Okay, yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely concerning. I think they're shopping Winston though. That is one thing. I think they're shopping Winston to move off of him. But and I do agree with you. Actually, Jameis Winston should get a chance to start somewhere in this league.
Hell yeah!
Actually, I totally believe that. I want to see eating W's and stealing crab legs all over.
He got LASIK, and we haven't got to see the results yet.
Yeah, seriously. Every time we've seen him on the field since, he's been pretty damn good. Let's be honest. I mean, I think Watson has been. I don't know if he's been gone. I guess he has gone ghost. We haven't seen him. You're absolutely right. That does
We haven't
qualify
seen. I
for the
mean, there's
fantasy
report they
fandom.
talk about him all the time because he's like polarizing, but we're not talking about like anything he's done
On
in
the
a
field.
game.
Like he hasn't
Yeah.
actually done anything. Yeah. I mean, I still think there's something there, man. And the value is enough for me to hold on to a couple shares or to have bought into a couple shares in the right or wrong situations, I guess, or circumstances. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. We need to see it. We really do need to see it. And the arm soreness and all that stuff, it's not good at all. It's not good.
And then Christian Watson, that pretty ambiguous wide receiver room that we have, very young wide receiver room there in Green Bay with your Romeo Dubs, Jaden Reeds, Dontavian Wicks, and Christian Watson. Christian Watson now has 2 equal legs, apparently, working out for him. So hopefully he won't get any hammies, but haven't seen any splash from him in the preseason. So I'm kind of worried. Like early on in training camp, OTAs and stuff like that, like there were some positive things. And that's kind of, I have a share. I actually got him from you. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this won't suck. Like maybe he'll be, wide receiver 2-ish type player for my Dynasty teams. But right now I'm kind of a little worried that just haven't really seen anything about him.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it's probably just them, trying to keep him ready for the season, keep him healthy for the season, not overwork him. But I don't think we've seen like a ton from the Green Bay starters in general this preseason, so I wouldn't be super concerned about it. I think we talked about Watson a little bit earlier this offseason. I'm kind of growing a little more okay with the idea of rostering him and what he can do, especially knowing that they kind of found out what the issues were with the soft tissue stuff. That is really encouraging. So I'm definitely warming up to the idea that he can still be something. And you're right. He has definitely been kind of the least talked about wide receiver, but I do think his value is probably held pretty well. If I had to guess, wide receiver 39, pick 100. And his value's dipped. It's actually dipped pretty considerably over the last month. And that may be due to other guys being talked up and not talked up, seeing a lot of from these other guys, other prospects, and him, like you're talking about, not really seeing the field or anything. So, yeah. I don't know. Christian Watson, it's just, damn, man. In that range, it's just, he's not somebody that's like, that you'd be super interested in. Like looking at kind of the wide receivers in that range, Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper, Adonai Mitchell, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin.
Gotcha.
Then the other players, it's like David Njoku, Tyjae Spears. Maybe you like him more than a Tyjae Spears. You maybe like him more than an early second round pick, but it's hard to like really want to get in on him at that wide receiver cost, in my opinion. Even if we have some hope for him.
All right, to finish off the topic, question for you. Do you think there's any edge in targeting like the quiet or forgotten ones?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like that's why I kind of were talking about this. That's why I brought this topic up for sure. I do think that it's worth just kind of going through the thought exercise on why some of these guys have been forgotten or have gone ghost in our minds. And, we're not talking about them in the fantasy community at large. So I think that, you end up kind of stumbling over a couple. You're like, oh shit, like I might be able to add that to, a trade or whatever, or might be a guy who I want to go after as a contender, those kind of things. I think Higgins is a really interesting one, honestly. He's in a range of wide receivers where I like him more, like quite a bit. And he's actually in that Rashee Rice range, and he's on a team that's a great team. Like obviously we give Rashee Rice the Mahomes boost, but like, why wouldn't we give Higgins the Burrow bump? You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like he's on a great team. He's absolutely the second wide receiver there with the contingent upside of a 1 in that offense. Boom games, like you see the 100-yard multi-touchdown games from him, big play guy. Like I don't know what's not to like about him. And we continue, I feel like, to do the thing like, what's the difference between this guy and Higgins? And I'm like, I don't know. He's just awesome when he's on the field, and I guess injuries are the difference. So I like the Higgins shout out a lot.
All right. So let's move on to running back dichotomy. I had to Google dichotomy just to really, I know what it means, but I really wanted to know what the actual definition is. And
it's just a fancy way to say like difference.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's properly used here, but very close. So we're just going to compare some running backs here, which is always fun to do, especially when there's a lot of value in holding backup running backs too. So we have DeAndre Swift, running back 18.
Well, now you have me looking up the definition of dichotomy, making sure like I'm at least using it like contextually right here. I think it works because it's a contrast between two things, right? Like if we use it, you know, in a simplistic way like that, I feel like it's the contrast between their ADPs, which is what kind of got me going on this down this rabbit hole anyway. So yeah, after I defended myself, go ahead with Swift.
No, you're fine. Like, I don't think it's like complete. What I'm trying to say,
this topic sucks.
It's close. All right, so yeah, running back comparisons. But so we have Swift as running back 18, and then he shares the backfield with Herbert and Roschon, who are RB69 and RB57, respectfully.
Yeah. Like you don't think that's like that's like super crazy value, like for the backups in that backfield.
It absolutely
behind a guy who has been underwhelming his entire career, who I like as a talent, I do, but he's obviously not been the guy we expect him to be, and what we're just expecting him now that he goes over to Chicago to be that guy. I don't know. And then we keep, you know, contingent upside is like the big like phrase that I've been using this whole show, but we're talking a lot about like value versus values, and like these guys are in the same backfield, and if he goes down, it's crazy upside. And so I don't even care which one at this point. I was talking about Herbert, and I do think he has really, really solid upside. I like Herbert more than Roschon, but both these guys I think are solid values that late. So I just think that this difference in values is way too stark. Like we're going to go through a couple other ones here, and you're going to not see a value difference that great. Maybe for the majority of the rest of these, couple of them, but not most of them. So that one really stuck out to me. Do either one of those guys interest you? Like, are you just...
I mean, yeah, like it's so much better when you do the extra work, which you did, instead of just having like Herbert and Roschon there as names, but you really have their
thanks, AJ.
Their ranking, right? And it's like 18 versus 69 and 57. Like that's too much. That's too much. That makes me want to go out there and try to get a Herbert on my team. Swift is still riding he's still riding like the prospect profile.
It feels like that, right?
Right? Because Swift was going to be everything we want him to be. He was going to be Christian McCaffrey light, right? Because he's got great hands. He's really shifty. He's, you know, quick.
Hand model.
He does all the things, right? Yeah, but he just has not actually, whether you like to admit it or not, he just hasn't really actually been that good. He's been fine. But to have a difference between RB18 and RB69 or RB57, but for the guy who's right behind him, it seems like is kind of a steal right here.
Just like Jalen Hyatt, Will Shipley, Diami Brown, Sam Howell. Would you trade a third-round pick for Khalil Herbert?
I think so. And I'd trade any of those people you mentioned. I'd trade.
Yeah, I think that's fine value for a guy like Herbert, because I do think that he's going to have standalone value as well, right? Like he's going to have some games where he has big plays, and he'll be fine. You'll be able to plug him in, I think, here and there. And so, yeah, I mean, I wonder if like we're dismissing Roschon completely. I've been like thinking about this a bit, because we talk a lot about Herbert because he's like explosive, but I mean, Roschon's a pretty solid player. You know what I mean? He kind of does all like the fundamentals really well. Coaches love that. So if you can get whichever one you can get cheaper, I'm probably in on, to be honest with you. And I would like to get one. I would like to get in on this offense. This is another one. You know, I've been talking, I think I talked about this a couple of times, but you know, we talk about the Carolina offense a little bit, but this is another one where I do feel like we are downplaying how successful they can be. And like, if Caleb is just awesome, which I do think he can be right off rip, like this team could be humming, and we want pieces of that, you know, especially in Dynasty. You get in on him early. Like I know that they can get out of Khalil Herbert pretty quick, but he's also a cheap back who they have on contract for, I think, 2 years. And it probably wouldn't be super expensive to keep him around. So kind of a guy who might fit, both kind of like a midterm range, like not short term or long term, but have some value, enough value to kind of not waste, not be wasting a third round pick if you were to send that away for him. So I like the idea of that.
Yeah, just with that team, it just reminds me of our willingness and wanting to get a cheap piece of Miami offense. And before that, the Bengals offenses that we haven't notoriously seen as being quote unquote good, but realizing that there's an uptick in that organization talent wise, trying to get in on it cheaply, I think is important. You could have done that with Waddle. You could have done that with Higgins. Any of those players on those teams last year, Houston. So with the St. Dells, Nico Collins, that type of thing. I think we might want to look at this Bears team in a similar fashion.
Yeah. And they also have Roshan under that rookie contract, so he'll be there for a couple of years almost no matter what. So both of them, I think, have the potential to remain there in terms of worrying about, buying into them and them being in the same situation, because obviously that's always a concern with Dynasty. So yeah, I like where those guys are at and their price, especially for this year. DeAndre Swift goes down and we are going to be kicking ourselves for not getting in on some RB 69 and 57 prices for the backups there. So yeah.
All right. Next one, Rachaad White, Tampa Bay running back 15, and the new rookie Bucky Irving running back 43. This one's not as crazy to me because just me personally, not a huge Bucky fan. I think he's fine, and I think he could do a lot of things, especially with his hands. I do think that this is.
We're all about the hands tonight, baby.
I was about the legs the other day, so it's good.
Yeah, damn, Uriah. We know what he likes. He likes the legs and he likes the hands, all right?
Wait till we start talking about ass. No.
The steak asses we need to get.
Steak ass. Yeah, that's for rookie season.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with this one as much.
Okay. Yeah, no, I feel that. Yeah, and where he's going, like Bucky Irving. Man, I don't know, because I guess the way I'm thinking about it is it's really just them two there, right? And running back 43 is would you rather have Bucky Irving or Tyler Algier?
Oh, yeah, Irving.
Okay, what about?
Well, no, you know what? I think Algier is a better handcuff.
I agree. I do agree with you there. I agree that I would rather Algier. Man, Bucky's approaching late second round value. I don't love that at all.
It's too high.
Running back 43. Yeah, I guess it is a little high. Man, I just I want to not believe in White, but I think White might just continue to be pretty damn good. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what this conversation and this thought process, going through looking at the ADP, I'm I want to be interested in the guy behind White because I've never believed in him that much, but he is clearly the best player there, best player suited to do what they want. And I don't see why a ton should change. So yeah, man, I'm not going to go buy any Rachaad White or anything like that, but I definitely think that he's going to produce this season. So there'll be some off ramps if you want to get out of Rachaad White. I would be doing that, I think, because I don't think, long term we see, many successful seasons in succession from guys who aren't good runners, right? Because he's really more of just a really good pass catcher and a volume guy. But yeah, leave it at that.
All right, next one we talked about a little bit. Kenneth Walker, RB 10, and Charbonnet was RB 36.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't like paying the running back 10 value for Ken Walker. He's going in that that Brian Thomas range. It's pretty expensive, the Mark Andrews range. And I just don't like paying for running backs like that. That goes kind of against my philosophy in general with Dynasty, right? So, we don't have to sit on this long, but it goes back to kind of the other conversation that we just had about the fantasy phantoms. I want a shot at Charbs, I think, at the price compared.
I agree. All right, so moving on up to Buffalo, we have James Cook, RB 13. Sheesh. and Ray Davis 52. At that, I saw what I saw out of Ray Davis. Actually, real quick, what I saw out of Frank Gore Jr. How was
He
he not on the
deserves to be
team?
on a roster. That's crazy.
Man, God. I mean, he put that's ridiculous. Anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully he comes to Dallas. But at this point, RB 52 for Ray Davis versus RB 13 for James Cook. Like, I want the backup. I want Ray Davis. Like, I would trade James Cook for Ray Davis and whatever the hell extra comes with it. Like, I'll do that.
That'd be an interesting trade. Ray Davis in
'Cause
Ray Davis in a second would cover it maybe? Yeah, you get the same
probably. I mean,
backfield.
RB 13, you might be able to get more.
Yeah, you should be able to get more. Like, could you do Ray Davis in a first? I would love to do that. Like, Ray Davis in a first would be smash. Honestly, I would like to take man, that value for James Cook is crazy. I want to sell the hell out of that value. And I have a share
Absolutely.
of him, and I've been trying
Me
to sell
too.
the shit out of him. And I can't really get anyone to bite on it yet. I think in season there'll be some outs because I think James Cook is going to have some good games. Like, he's not a bad
Sure.
player or anything, but like
RB
Ray
13.
Davis is going around, like Kendra Miller, Tyrone Tracy, still the rookies, Keaton Mitchell. Would you trade Austin Eckler for Ray Davis straight up?
Team dependent. But I could see
I think you
see a
should be able
world
to get plus. I think you should
I
be
could
able
see
to
a
get
world
plus.
where I do that.
Mike White's the Bills. What is wrong with this guy? Okay, get out of our chat with Mike White's the Bills when we're having such a riveting conversation here. Yeah, Malachi Cornish, I'm trying to think. Tyler Lockett for Ray Davis plus. Like, there's got to be some ways to get into. Maybe people are too up on the Ray Davis stuff. Would you trade, seeing what you've seen, would you trade a second for Ray Davis and a third?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think it's
Because
great process.
you got a little bit of insurance there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's fine to do, especially if you're a contender. I don't think it's great process, but I think the reason I asked is because I think it goes to the point of like how valuable we consider Ray Davis now, right? Like, based on what we've seen, and going running back 52 compared to running back 13. Like,
13.
I don't want any part of that running back 13. I don't want to. I definitely would never draft a James Cook there. I want to see like what he's going around, like in terms like running back 13 sounds super high.
It's almost unbelievable.
Running back. Okay, so 24 late first, Jonathan Brooks, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Debo, Travis Kelce. He's going ahead of Travis Kelce. That's insane with the I mean, just the tight end, like the positional advantage that you're getting there. Like, I would love to
Just the
deals like
points,
that.
man. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, I think people would probably. I mean, that's an interesting one. Wow. Yeah. So there's some things to be done with James Cook. Let's just put it that way. We'll leave it there.
All right. Josh Jacobs going to get 500 carries this year.
We'll see.
Because
Aren't they all injured? I'm pretty sure every running back in this backfield is injured.
Josh Jacobs going to have to suck it up and take 500 carries. RB 14, Marshawn Lloyd. RB 40. Hurt. What was ahead of him, or maybe even behind him, depending on how you looked at, was AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon goes to season-ending IR. So there goes that story. So basically, it's just Josh Jacobs taking like all the carries. That's crazy.
I swear he had an injury. Did he not? Working through minor hamstring injury and OTAs. That's what it was. So they're all injured, dude. Like, I'm still not convinced that he's going to be able to even take 500 carries given. I mean, I know that's what every team tries to do with Josh Jacobs. They're just like, carry machine here.
There you go.
Yeah, here's the ball. This is all you can do. But I do think that, this Dillon injury or this Dillon IR stint is really big for Marshawn Lloyd. Like, the fact that they did that, and I'm sure I haven't looked at the depth chart. I'm sure there's like a couple stragglers there still, but like, I don't think there's going to be anybody super impactful behind Jacobs or Marshawn Lloyd, and running back 40 is a pretty nice cost. With him being injured, I'm still totally cool with adding him. I don't think injuries for rookie running backs are the same as like injuries for rookie wide receivers. I think more often than not, the rookie running backs can get back on the field unless it's something like Evan Hull where he had to have surgery, but that's not really what it looks like. Marshawn Lloyd is going through. So unless it's something like that, I think we are going to see quite a bit of Marshawn Lloyd, and I like that price quite a bit. And I mean, anybody who has listened to us long enough knows that we're not in on guys who have had those 300 carry seasons unless their name is Derrick Henry. So
pretty much.
Yeah.
All right.
And
last one.
Sorry, go ahead. You're good.
Alvin Kamara, RB 24. That's a pretty good price. And then Kendra Miller, he's going to be on PUP or IR, so he won't even get to play for a couple weeks. Dennis Allen hates him, absolutely hates the guy. I think what you finished off here with the question is like, how much are you willing to pay for Kamara in Dynasty? If we don't believe in his backup, I
mean, there's nobody else. I mean, even Jamal Williams is the only one, right? Like, and again, Jamal Williams is a fine player, but I do think that he might be on the wrong side of his career, and Alvin Kamara is just, significantly better. Unless he's injured, I don't think we're going to see a ton of, impact from Williams. And then Kendra Miller, like you just talked about, team cannot stand, or the head coach can't stand him. So, and
Seems
he's,
like
hitting, I think he's hitting PUP or whatever. So he's not able to get on the field further, putting him in the doghouse. So yeah, I'm wondering like what
year two.
I'm wondering what a 28-year-old running back is worth. Granted, 29-year-old running back. Granted, guy who catches a ton of passes, but has gotten less efficient each year. He's going around that Javonte Williams, Jalen Polk. I mean, I would trade Jalen Polk straight up for him pretty easily, I think. Maybe I'm undervaluing Jalen Polk, but I think that's a pretty strong bet for a contender, number one. And I could see a lot of contenders having like those Jalen Polk type profiles, but maybe you can flip like a Blake Corum into Alvin Kamara. But would you be willing to spend a first round pick on Kamara?
That's not the way I do things. It's not, it's not really the way I do things. Sitting here today in August. But I think, I think there's plenty of managers that would be maybe out of contention later on in the season if Kamara is still holding up. I think that'd be fine value, the future first. And whoever is now not contending, who happens to have Kamara, might be willing to ship him off. But I wouldn't do that right now, personally.
Love that answer.
It's probably fine value. If you have an extra second round, like I'd rather do 2 seconds. I know we're like pinching pennies here, but you're playing with fire with the running back to age and usage of Kamara. But RB24 is really cheap compared to what we've seen in his entire career. So it's almost to a point where it's kind of enticing. But you really are going to setting yourself up for that gotcha situation where like, hey, you fucking knew you shouldn't have been investing in these old ass running backs, and this is what you get. So that's always in the back of my mind when I'm looking at something like that. I really want to be a little bit more secure about the path my dynasty teams are going to be taking heading into the playoffs in order to make a move like this.
Yeah, I mean, I love that answer because it goes back to kind of the philosophy of not buying running backs in the offseason, right? And we're not through the offseason yet. And I think that this is a good exercise to go through to like talk about, the age of running backs and when it's appropriate to buy them. Because first of all, you don't need to trade a first for Alvin Kamara at all. Like anyone listening now or in season when he's doing well, you still shouldn't, because not much has changed. Like we kind of should expect him to do pretty well given the role he has in that offense, maybe even better than what, that running back 24 KTC listing. But it's more, you can buy him for, peak cost would be a first round pick and you should never have to do it, but you can get that done late in season. You could probably get it done for a second round pick like you could now. You know what I mean? I really don't think obviously if it was me or like you, we probably are going to try to hold somebody's feet to the fire. But like at the end of the day, if we're coming down to the wire, knowing that, we don't want a 29 or 30-year-old Kamara on our team next year, like we're gonna compromise at some level. Like we're not going to just be like, oh, first or you're not getting Kamara. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly.
it's unlikely that you're going to try, and maybe somebody will foolishly do it. And maybe if you say, here, I'll give you a first, or give me a first for Kamara and a third, like, and you weasel it out that way by adding a piece. Like you could do it, don't get me wrong, but I just think that you're going to one way or another. My point is that you can get these things done in season when you know the landscape of the running back position and you're more confident in what's actually going on. So I like the idea of Kamara. As we're talking about it, the fact that the running back behind him we'd most be interested in is running back 55 in the 200s. It's illuminating in terms of like, what he can do, but I think we still got to be cautious and try to balance that dynasty value with the production.
Excellent. I like that.
Awesome.
Like this 2 topics quite a bit.
I thought that was fun, right?
Yeah. Let's hit on some trades and non-trades.
Let's do it.
No, not me. This would be somebody else. So Justin Fields, 25 second for Geno and a 25 third. I like it. I like it. Someone is hoping that Fields will get a start this year, and they get a second on top of it, because obviously Fields, when it comes to scoring points, is valued less than a guy like Geno. I think Geno is a good quarterback to target. I think it's a good trade. I like it for both sides.
Yeah. So this was a tough one because value-wise, their value, like I'm pretty sure Fields is valued ahead of Geno technically in like Dynasty Data Lab and like ADP technically.
Yeah.
But like I totally don't understand that valuation. It drives me insane because
I don't think it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, one may never be a starter, and one is actually a starter on a team that has like really great weapons and a new offensive coordinator, and he's talking about wanting an extension. And like if that happens, then we're cooking with gas, and we don't have to worry about the Geno side. Let's go, Jake. We don't have to worry about the Field stuff anyway. But on this team, I happen to have Russell Wilson and Fields, and so it was like more of like, do I want to just like keep the group in case Fields, gets the job? But then I like at the end of the day, at some point you do have to just believe in your evaluations, knowing that like, I don't believe in Justin Fields. Like I don't believe he's good. So getting rid of him for a starting quarterback who I do believe is pretty solid, who can start in this league, and swapping like a second for a third really shouldn't be that much. So at the end of the day, I like, what I didn't, there, but, I was going back and forth, and I think at first it was like they wanted, Fields in the second for Geno straight. And this was like over a couple of days, and like it got to a point where I was like, well, no, I guess it's not, we're not going to do it or whatever. And like I waited a day or so later, and I sent this offer and immediately withdrew it. And it was partly my hesitation. And it was partly like, I know that I'll get their attention. And like, I wonder if they'll be interested in this, because the last offer we ended on was I wanted this, but it's a 26 third, not a 25 third. It's a 26 third, which I think matters to them quite a bit, which didn't really matter to me much. So I think initially I was trying to get like a 25 third, and they were like a fourth, and I was like, no. And that's where it ended. But then I hit them with this, and they were like, I revoked it immediately. They came back and they're like, did you send that? And I was like, oh yeah, here, I'll send it back. And they were like, yeah, we're good. And so I wonder if sending it and revoking it got them, like we talked about recently.
We talked about it last week.
Yeah. Like, did it get them like, oh, he thinks he's sending too much now? You know what I mean? Like, oh, we got him where we want him almost, where it was like, I almost like feel like I got him where I want, like I got them where I want them. It's a co-manager group. So there's 2 of them, but one way or another. So that's the way it worked out. And it made me think back to that conversation we were having. And I was like, shit, I think that it worked. Like, I do think that it was like, again, it wasn't like completely intentional, but it was like, as I did it, I was like, oh, man, I wonder if this is going to get like like when I sent it, I was like, yeah, this will probably get them thinking, but I know we just talked and they were like, nah, this isn't what we want. But the way I did it, I do think that it impacted potentially their emotional state and kind of their actions in the end. So yeah.
You think you'll try that again?
To see if it's viable? For sure. And it's not the first time I've done it. Like I have, and again, in the past, I would say like 90% of the time, it's like I am sending one that I'm like hesitant about, and I'm like, I'm probably like out doing something, like, yeah, I'm just gonna send it, and then I think about it for a second. I'm like, let me go back and withdraw that. You know what I mean? But
That's me. Yeah.
there has been intentional times before too, and this right here will make me in the future be more intentional about it for sure. To your point, so yeah,
I like it. Would you have done just quick? Would you have done Fields? Oh, of course you would. Yeah. Never mind. Moving on. So I made a trade. I was looking for an older type receiver. I think I sent you an offer for Adams. Was gonna send something for Allen, but Jake was a little bit quicker with a counter, so I sent one for him too. So I sent Evan Ingram for Cooper Kupp. I really like Evan Ingram, especially in tight end premium, but I do have Trey McBride, and if something happens to him, like, it's not looking pretty anyway. But I really wanted to get one of these older type wide receivers that I think could have a top 16 season. So I did send Evan Ingram for Cooper Kupp. Have no idea what their values are dynasty wise. Didn't even look. Don't really care. Was thinking about points. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this both ways. I think that this made sense for both teams, but I mean, Kupp obviously has the higher upside for sure, and I think that he has more value in Dynasty. So, like, I think Ingram's side probably could have got something coming back as well. In like, in a trade calculator, I should say. Like, I think that's the way that would work. But yeah, I like this both ways. Like, I do think Kupp it probably wins this trade, though. I'll put it that way. But I think Ingram is kind of undervalued, man. I was looking at him, and just like in tight end premium leagues, he's going to be pretty damn good once again. So I like both these guys.
If I didn't have Trey McBride on my team, this is not something I would have even considered. I think
Evan Ingram a lot harder to do. Yeah,
exactly. I would try to do something else, but
and the one thing about Ingram is, compared to Kupp, he does have a little bit longer of a runway, career wise. Yep. So even though they're similar ages, like, I do think that the Ingram side bought a couple years back potentially, even though they're not going to get the same weekly upside as they are with a Kupp, but they are going to get some upside, right? Like, you're getting some pretty decent upside with him. So it's a good trade all around. Yeah, I like that. Both, before we move on, real quick here, we got a YouTube listener or viewer trade. Zamir White Zamir White and the 25-second or Kyron? Yeah, Zamir White and a 25-second or Kyron. Give me Kyron still. Yeah, give me Kyron still. Going away pretty easily.
Man, I'll defer to Billy here, and I'll agree with him. I just, man, the thing about, there's two things. It's two things. It's because Zamir White, it's the hopium, because we feel like he has his backfield locked to himself, right? And then we have Kyron Williams, who is now going to be on punt return duties.
Right. You nailed it. I was going there. Yeah.
But they, so that's a little unsettling.
Sure.
But you're getting that second back for the chance to see if Zamir White could actually be good. But we haven't seen enough of Zamir White on his own to really feel comfortable doing that. So with that, I will defer to say, hey, Kyron, because we actually saw him able to do that workhorse load. We just haven't really seen that with Zamir White. So I think I'd feel comfortable going Zamir White, and I would try to talk it down to a 25 third. At least count him back.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about the punt return stuff, though. That is funny that it's coming out, and it probably will impact people's value of Kyron. I don't think either Zamir White or the 25-second are nearly concrete enough assets where we can confidently move on from Kyron to those. Like, I would just keep searching and hope you can get, first type value or something like that instead of this, which are, Zamir White could easily be nothing by the end of this year. And then you're stuck with like a second Kyron who's like running back probably like 6 or some ungodly rank right now, which, we don't agree with that either. But the fact that he's ranked there, like, we need to, act appropriately in the market. So I don't think we should be underselling. I want to make sure. Let me see. Where's Kyron at? Okay. All right, so he's not running back 6 at least, but okay, so he's running back 8. Sorry, running back 8. Yeah, we should be able to extract a lot more value than Zamir White in the second. Like we're talking about, early 26 firsts in that range. Yeah, I wanna reach higher personally.
It's a great answer. All right, so next trade I made, same day. I was going through cleaning up my Dynasty rosters, and I noticed I had a trade that I didn't realize was sent to me. I don't know how long it was sitting there, but someone had offered me their Bryce Young for my JJ McCarthy straight up. And there's no real big reason to do this other than a little bit scared of the overall health of quarterbacks after what we saw last year. And in Superflex, I tend to kind of roster, at least on average, probably one more quarterback than most people do. It's just the way it's been. They're easy to trade if you need to trade for a player where you have like an injury or whatever it is. So I didn't think that what JJ McCarthy could possibly bring to us versus what I think I am a little more intrigued in what's going on there with Canales and Bryce Young there in Carolina. I thought since there was nothing extra really add on either side, I thought it was really good. I did get Bryce Young and the rookie Flournoy for Dallas. I don't really care. He just actually put it in the trade, but I just thought it was kind of a good idea for me to go ahead and trade JJ McCarthy. He's going to be on IR all year long. I won't be able to use him at all. I'm trying to win this league as I always am. So I thought I'd take a shot on Bryce Young. And I thought for me, it's a pretty lateral move. Only one of them is going to be throwing passes this year and the other one's not.
Like, what is the difference between these two guys? I think it's super interesting. One of them, neither of them possess extreme upside. I think both of them possess basically the same ceiling, probably similar floors. One guy was a much better prospect than the other, and his name isn't JJ McCarthy, right? Like he went 101. Yeah. He just in general was a better prospect, hands down, right? The only thing that McCarthy has going for him is that he is on a better roster, right? With a arguably a better head coach and a better coordinator, one and the same with Kevin O'Connell. But Bryce Young did get a massive upgrade in Canales, who everybody believes in, right? The entire community, I would say, both NFL and fantasy-wise, believe in Canales. Okay, they added a bunch of weapons.
All he does is fix quarterbacks.
Right, all he does is fix quarterbacks. They have a bunch of weapons. So I don't hate this trade is kind of what I'm getting at here, and I don't think we should view them that much differently other than obviously we have seen Bryce Young not succeed. We haven't seen McCarthy not succeed yet, right? We just don't know. So it's obviously that's a big part of it, and you've lost some dynasty value inherently from that. There's an added fragility to Bryce Young's profile because he hasn't hit. If he doesn't do well again, it's going to be really tough to get, extract the similar value from that you gave up. So obviously the risks are there and I see it, but I don't think that it's a terrible move, especially if you're looking for, points, if you're looking for, a third quarterback on your team who also can have some long-term upside and stability. I totally get it. And I had the same offer in DU1 a couple of months ago, and I didn't pull the trigger because I'm not competing. Well, I don't think I'm going to be competing. And I figure why add the points to my roster? And so again, kind of going back to, I don't need to take on the risk to really do that when there's probably, a little bit less risk in rostering McCarthy. So that's the difference between the two, if we're really getting down to it. And so, yeah, I don't hate it either way. And I understand why I did it.
Yeah. And if, what we're hoping to see in Carolina does pan out, possibly this would be the cheapest get Bryce Young. So we'll see.
Get this guy out of here, Jake. Oh my God. McCarthy has a better head coach too. Jesus. Okay. All right. Yeah. That's how you know we're nearing the end of the show here when we're really going off the rails, even in the comments. Okay. So our last one here is Luke McCaffrey for a 2nd round pick. What would you do?
Sure. If you believe in Luke McCaffrey, sure. I think personally, if I drafted Luke where I drafted him, I think I would be comfortable because I obviously don't need him, right? He's a rookie. I'm not counting on him. I think I feel comfortable resetting and just getting that 2nd back.
Yeah, I definitely want the 2nd. I think in general, these kind of wide receivers aren't often that super impactful. Like if he's his brother, then you'll be really happy you paid,
Yeah, no
you
doubt.
paid a second for him, right? But I don't think that's what we're getting out of Luke McCaffrey. So like one thing I want to say about this is I don't like chasing these kind of players when their value goes up. I said this recently, I feel like on the pod too, but if you miss out on these guys, you have to just accept that you missed out on some of these guys. You know what I mean? Like this isn't, in my opinion, like it depends. Maybe you do feel like this is tanked out. Like that's what you feel like. But like I just, again, wasn't confident this year in any of like the guys outside the top where I was like, dude, this guy has an elite trait and like he's being, undervalued or he's going under the radar or whatever. Like I don't believe in Luke McCaffrey like that. So I could never justify giving up a second for McCaffrey, but I don't even know if I was doing that for Puka. I feel like you kind of just got to wait till you have to pay like the first round pick and he's like absolutely legit, then pay the second because you're going to get burned more often than not. You know what I mean? Like I would rather just wait and pay the actual cost of the player knowing he's like the top of the top than pay for mid. And so that's what I feel like I've done here is kind of pay for mid.
He's one of those players that I don't want to take the gamble of getting in on early. Like I don't want to be like, oh, I think he could be this, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. Like I'm just not quite that interested in it. For your acquisition cost of what Luke McCaffrey was costing you in rookie drafts, I'd just go ahead and take that second. Let somebody else find out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is a real deal that got done. It was in one of our listener leagues. And so this goes to show you that like, the camp hype or the cuts like really matter. Like, seeing or the trades, like seeing Jahan Dotson get traded, that definitely was a catalyst for this deal getting done.
Absolutely.
And so somebody was able to, take advantage of that moment. And this is a great example of taking advantage of these moments. It won't always work. Like the person who has the second isn't always going to want to give it up for Luke McCaffrey, but you're going to find somebody who does. Like, and so you got to attack it. You know what I mean? You got to put it out there. You got to send offers out. So it's just a great example of that, in my opinion.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
And sorry, real quick. He was drafted at the 307. So
yeah. So there you go. I was thinking mid-third ish in my head. So still got it. Yep.
But yeah, other than that, just shout out to all the YouTube listeners, viewers, all the podcast listeners. Love seeing, we've definitely seen an influx on the podcast. So love seeing that. Appreciate everybody. Hop in the Discord. Just keep saying it. If you want to connect with us, if you want to, get topics on the show, all that good stuff, hop into our Discord. It's all over the Twitter. Hop on Twitter to, me, Uriah, Jake, anybody, we'll get you in there. We'll get you an invite. It's free and we love connecting with everybody. So yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, probably one of the best things that comes out of the Discord is some of the trade talks we talk about. So I know that's an area, especially for new Dynasty listeners, that like they're a little unsure of if they should make a certain move or not. And we have a bunch of guys in there that are just like so heady about like talking about your roster construction. How many are you starting? What are your settings? What does your team look like? What does the other guy's roster look like? And why would they want to move it? So like there are higher level discussions you could have in our Discord about the trades you're about to make versus going on Twitter or somebody else and just posting like, hey, which side do you want, A or B? And people are going to select it, but there's not a lot of context behind it. In the Discord, we provide a lot of context. So, and on top of that, we can put it on the show and talk about it here too. So just one of those things if you're considering hopping in the Discord.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, y'all have a good night and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Peace out.